Thank you to everyone for joining us in the room and braving the cold. And thank you to everyone on the webcast for joining. I think this will be a pretty quick seminar. I will go through the slides, which are available for all of you to download if you're interested. They have notes with some instructions on them. From there, we can look at a little bit of a demo. This is not going to be very demo heavy because, first of all, it's kind of hard for the webcast audience to see the screen and see the detail of what's going on behind me when that happens. But also, I am a department of one at the Chicago Bar, and so when you're teaching a collaboration class, it can be a little bit difficult to demo with just one person. So we can't really, I'm going to pull out my phone and use my other Google account so we can see a little bit, but it's not going to be as fleshed out as it would be otherwise. But so yeah, we'll run through the slides. I pulled a lot of the screenshots on the slides from the internet, and you'll see them. They're pretty funny. It's a Google Doc of the Gettysburg Address for the most part. And so obviously not something that a lawyer would be working on, or at least not anytime this century. But it gets the point across of what we're talking about when we look at the screenshots. So I just want to point out that I did borrow those from the internet. I am not that funny. I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Ann Haag. I am the practice management advisor here at the Chicago Bar Association. And of course, we are here today to talk about how to use Google Docs for document collaboration. So before we talk about anything else, I want to clear up some confusion surrounding the different levels of Google accounts, because they do affect a little bit of what access you have to different things. And also it can get kind of confusing with the verbiage and everything. But with a standard Google account, individuals get free use of Google Docs, Google Sheets, and Google Slides, and up to 15 gigabytes of free Google Drive storage. Those who need more storage can upgrade to a Google One plan starting at $2 per month. So the only difference between a plain Google account and a Google One account is extra storage. You don't get any of the business perks. I tend to tell lawyers to steer away from those free accounts just because I don't think Google's business is data. And if you are not paying for the additional enterprise level security, you're not getting it. And so I really am wary of that. And I tend to not trust Google. Or not just Google, just any company whose business is data. So especially if you're dealing with anything related to clients, which you probably would be if you're using Google Docs, I would recommend getting one of the paid accounts. So businesses can opt for a Drive Enterprise plan, which also includes docs, sheets, and slides, as well as business-friendly features including shared drives, enterprise-grade security, and integration with third-party tools like Slack and Salesforce. This level is called the Drive Enterprise Plan, and it costs $8 per active user per month, plus 4 cents per gigabyte used. So somewhere around $8. Lastly, Google Drive, Docs, Sheets, and Slides are a part of the company's G Suite Office suite, along with numerous other communications tools, including Gmail, Google Calendar, Hangouts, Meet, and Hangouts Chat, plus security and administrative tools. So G Suite plans range from $6 per user per month for the basic plan, with 30 gigabytes of storage, to $25 per user per month for the enterprise plan, with unlimited storage, advanced administrative tools, security, and e-discovery tools. So you kind of have to assess what you're using it for. If you just want that security, either the G Suite, the basic plan, or that Drive Enterprise plan might be a good option. You just kind of have to compare them all side by side and see what's right for you. The enterprise versions of something like Drive, Docs, and Sheets are pretty much identical to their free counterparts, but with a few extra features for the business environment. I can only think of one that we're going to talk about today, and we'll get there later. So where does Google Docs fit into all this? Google Docs is an app included with both the standard and the free Google account and the G Suite account. It's in everything. It's an online service that allows you to work on documents, spreadsheets, and presentations for free without worrying about losing your work if your computer crashes. So that's a pretty nice freedom. And you can work from anywhere that you can log into it. You can access that document. It's not tied to that local access. Its sharing feature, which is of course what we're here to talk about today, makes it a strong tool for collaboration. So the last thing that I kind of want to define right off the bat is Google Drive. Many people think of Google Drive as a cloud storage and sync service, and it is that, but it also encompasses a suite of online Office apps that are comparable with Microsoft Office, Google Docs, the word processor that we're going to talk about today, Google Sheets, which is essentially the Excel equivalent, and Google Slides, which is like PowerPoint. And pretty much everything that we're going to talk about, all of the collaborative tools that we're going to talk about with Google Docs also apply to those other apps. So if you are working in a spreadsheet that you want to share with somebody, it's a good tool for that too. The same like real-time editing is there. You can import, export, or natively edit Microsoft Office files. It's not convenient. Google Drive kind of gets a little clunky if you're using Word to create documents, it gets a little bit clunky. You don't have that like seamless cloud access. You have to every time you want to open it, you have to download it and pull it down from the cloud, edit it in Word, and then re-upload it. So it's not quite as seamless, but you can use it to store or back up Microsoft Office files. And you can use them to work together with colleagues on a document, spreadsheet, or presentation in real time if you wish. You do not have that real-time access if you're working with like a Microsoft file. It doesn't work that way. It has to be a Google Doc. So let's talk a little bit about editing. Here you can get a sense of what it looks like when someone else edits a Google Doc that you also have access to. So presumably this is a document that you created and have shared with somebody, and then they have edited it and sent it back to you. When anybody adds text, it will appear in a different color. Each collaborator gets their own color text, and if they add an image, that image will have a border in their color. So you can see that this editor in this screenshot added the photo of Abraham Lincoln because it's outlined in blue. They crossed out an address at Gettysburg and suggested the Gettysburg Address instead, and wrote photo Abraham Lincoln. Anything that they delete will have a strike through in their color, which you can also see in this slide. So the color just kind of helps you keep track of everything.
Do you have to select a color, or is it just the next person is automatically assigned one?
So for the webcast audience, the person asked, do you get to select a color or is it automatically assigned? It's automatically assigned. If you, for some reason, don't like a color, you might be able to change it, but yeah, it's not a choice that you have to make. When you and one or more of your collaborators are viewing your document, spreadsheet, or presentation at the same time, an icon appears at the upper right corner for each person who is currently viewing the file. So in this screenshot, you can see that it's probably two people, that S and H icons. They're both looking at the file at the same time. The icon may be a headshot of that person or the first letter of their first name. They will also see your online status as an icon at the upper right corner of their screen. So they can also see that you're looking at it. That goes both ways. You can chat with one another. Clicking the speech bubble icon to the right of the icons of your collaborators. So where it's the little gray and white button up there that has like a person and then a little speech bubble next to it. That will open a chat window along the right side of your screen. And so then you can kind of instant message with each other. You both have to be looking at the document at that time in order for that to work though. It's not something where you can like leave a chat and the other person can see it later when they open the document. It doesn't work like that. It's like a real-time thing only. Whenever you or your collaborators add a comment, text, or image, the others will see the comments or changes that appear at that moment on the document, spreadsheet, or presentation. So there's really not much of a lag time to it at all. You can see things in real time. I have heard about attorneys who, and this applies more, this specific scenario that I heard about applied more to OneNote, but the idea is the same. You could use Google Docs for this, but people who will use a Google Doc during a deposition to kind of like pass notes back and forth, and you can like communicate without speaking. And just kind of, that idea of like passing notes back and forth. I think that's an interesting idea, a good way to use it. But the point is that everything happens in real time. There's no delay. Revision history is a tool that lists the times that all changes to a document were made and who made them, so it really keeps track of everything at a granular level. This allows you to see who made different edits to a document at what point in the process. To do this, you just go to File and then See Revision History. This will put your document into a different mode and pull up a sidebar on the right listing all of the changes. Not only that, but you can select one of these revisions on the right to change everything back to that version of the document. So if somebody comes in and sabotages all of your hard work and they make so many changes that it's hard to figure out, it's easier to just jump back to a previous version than it is to try and undo all the changes that they made. You can fix it by easily just selecting that older version before they came in and messed things up and hit restore this revision. Mm-hmm.
Where do you find that, in the right column?
Yeah, so if you go to File and then See Revision History, this column opens on the right that lists, so it's the little blue box that says Revision History. And then you click on a version and then the Restore This Revision button appears. All right, so comments. Comments are a way to keep editing a little bit more clean instead of, or like if you have kind of a, a higher level edit where you want to, I was an English major in college and I ran into this a lot where it's like, instead of changing one word, you want to address like an entire idea in a paragraph or something, or like suggest a shift in tone or something. You can add a comment, and that's a way to keep things a little bit more clean. To do that, you just highlight a word or sentence or an area of the paper or document and select Insert and then Comment. And this will put a speech bubble text box next to your selection. You can see what that looks like on the screen. There are two separate comments by this woman, Shannon. She said, what do you think of this headline? And then needs more scores, which is funny, 7 years ago. So anyone with access to the document can reply to your comment. And so that allows for conversations to happen without needing to be online at the same time. So it's kind of an alternative to that chat option where, so for chat, you both need to be looking at the document at the same time. Comments, you don't need to be. So you can add a comment and they can see it like a day later or an hour later. And then they can respond to the comment and say, I actually don't like that idea, I'm going to ignore it, or they can just hit resolve and make the changes. So suggestions are a little bit different. They are a unique feature to Google Docs. This is an ability to switch between work modes, so specifically from editing to suggesting.
Where do you find that?
So it's in the top right corner of the window. There's a silhouette of a pencil that probably says editing.
Okay.
And we can look at this in a minute. We'll jump into Google Docs. It says editing to the left of it. If you feather that menu down and select suggesting, you will now be making suggestions rather than changes. Sorry. What this means is every change that you make, whether you're replacing words or adding a space or changing a font, will be shown as a comment that has to be approved by somebody before it goes through. So it's a little more similar to track changes, maybe in Word, where it's like something that has to be approved before it actually gets integrated into the document. Whereas with just the straight editing feature, somebody can make all the changes that they want. You don't have to like go through and approve or deny those. So it's Google Docs' answer to track changes, I think. It's a great tool for being transparent with edits and allowing people to clearly see what you want to change, add, or remove. You can also leave comments on this suggestion to explain your reasoning. So right here, you can see Shannon left she left a suggestion to say delete of the people, and then underneath it, she left a comment to explain that and said redundant ? And then if you were Abe Lincoln, you would reject that suggestion because he kept it in there. On the other end, if you've received some of the suggested edits, so if you are the owner of the document and somebody has sent you a document with suggested edits in it, you can choose whether or not to accept them. To do that, you just click Tools and then Review Suggested Edits. A gray box will open toward the upper right of the screen, and to view the document with the suggested edits merged in, you can click Show Suggested Edits. So that's like the Google Doc equivalent of like a normal track changes view where you can see the markup and everything.
What's a track?
Track changes. So track changes in Word is where it's kind of like the digital equivalent of somebody marking up a document with a red pen. And so you'll like send the document to somebody and it keeps track of every change that you make down to like adding a space. And you see all those changes on the screen. It can look really convoluted. And then the owner of the document has to like accept all of the changes before they're actually integrated into the document. So to view the document with the suggested edits merged in, click Show Suggestions. Ooh, I'm having trouble saying suggested today. Show Suggested Edits, drop down and select Preview and then Accept All. To view without the suggested edits, select Preview and then Reject All. If you want to accept or reject all of the suggestions at once without going through them one by one, so if you trust this person and just want to go for it, you can click the Accept All or Reject All buttons in this box. So I also want to point out at the bottom of the screen, that screenshot, you can see, so the document that we're looking at is called Gettysburg Rough Draft, and there's a gray circle next to it with the 2 in it. That means that there are 2 suggestions waiting for you. So
Not
you,
2 people, 2 suggestions.
correct. Yeah, so the people are indicated, and we'll talk about this more when we talk about sharing in just a second. The people who have access to the document are indicated by the little like heads that you can see next to the bubble with the 2. So the 2 is just for suggestions. All right, so now we can talk about sharing a little bit. The first way to share any document is to type the email address of the person you'd like to share the document with. So this would be the image on the left on the screen. So you would click that share button, and this is the window that pops up. It says share with others, and then you would type their email in. If they're in your Google contacts, you can just type their name. This is the most secure way to share a Google Doc because only the exact people you invite can open it. Type the email address, the address of the person you'd like to share it with. Again, Google Contacts account is integrated, so if you keep track of your contacts, it's an easy way to share. By clicking the pencil next to it, you can decide on permissions for the document. The default is for, I believe editing is the default. So if you share and just don't change anything, the other person is going to have complete access to do whatever they want with it. They can edit it. They can make whatever changes they want.
You say it again, if you do what?
If you don't change anything, so if you don't click on the pencil, that is the default that they have full access to it. If you want to restrict it a little bit more, you can say they can only comment. And so then they can't actually make the changes, but they can like suggest edits and everything. Or you can set it so they can only view. So that would be kind of like a final review step where they're not going to be able to make any changes to it. The other way to share is by using a shareable link for the document. This allows you to share the document by pasting a URL in your chat application of choice, so you could like paste it into an email. To do this, you click the Get Shareable Link button at the top right of that box that pops up when you hit share. If your Google account belongs to an organization, so like if you have G Suite set up for your whole office and everyone is like tied to one administrative account, the link will only work for other people inside the organization by default. If you have a standard Google account, the link will be open to anyone by default. By default, people with the URL will only be able to view the article. So that's different from before. If you share by adding the email address, the default is that they can edit. If you share using a link, the default is that they can only view. So you have to change that if you want people to have more access to it than that. As before, you can adjust that though. Once a document is shared, an icon that looks like two silhouetted heads will appear to the right of its title in Drive, like we saw on the previous slide. We can go back so next to that gray circle with the 2 in it, you can see that this has been shared with somebody. The untitled document below it also has been. If a document it only belongs to you, it hasn't been shared, it just wouldn't have that little icon. Oh, so the one thing that I did want to point out here is that the G Suite and Drive Enterprise versions of Google Drive let you set an expiration date for a shared document. After the date passes, the person or people you've shared the document with will no longer be able to view it. However, this only works for users who have been allowed comment or view access to a file. It won't work if they've been able to edit it. So that this comes up a lot with like talking about cloud security, that expiration date. It's a great idea, but you really have to be sure that you are using it correctly. So like if you, in this case, you could set an expiration date, but if you accidentally shared it with edit access, it's not actually gonna work. They're gonna have access to that document for as long as they want. So yeah, it's a great idea, but you really have to be sure that you're using it correctly.
Where do you set that?
So I believe I have screenshots of that later, so we'll circle back to that in just a second. The actual instructions for how to set that expiration date. So sharing multiple documents. When a single doc isn't enough for your project, you can share a whole folder and work within that, giving everyone access to multiple things or everything stored within that folder. If you add anything in that shared folder, it will automatically allow access to anyone who is part of that shared folder. So most cloud platforms, all of them that I know of, but I don't want to overstate that just because there's always an exception, they use what they call waterfall access. And so what that means is that everything flows downward. It doesn't flow upward. And so if you have your main folder, which is like all of your files, and then you have subfolders within that, if you share one of those subfolders, people are only going to have access to anything shared within that subfolder. They're not going to have access to the main file. It doesn't go upwards. It only goes down.
The subfile of the subfile.
So anything stored within the subfolder that you share, they will have access to. Right. So anything below it in the structure, it's kind of like you have to think about like a tree hierarchy. So you can also color code your folders so you can easily tell which one is which. Just right click and select change color. This will only change the colors for yourself, not for anyone else. So that's important to know. Kind of in keeping with that, you have some accounts have the team drives option. So Drive Enterprise and the Business Enterprise and Education versions of G Suite. We didn't talk at all about the education versions. I honestly, I know a lot less about the education version of G Suite, but I have run into it with people who work for like Chicago Public Schools or something. But if that doesn't apply to you, you really don't need to know anything about it. It's essentially just, I believe because you're working with minors, it has like more HIPAA compliant kind of security. So you lack some features. I've run into that with people who like, they'll call me and say like, I don't have this button that you talked about. I'm like, do you work at a school? And that's usually the case. So if that doesn't apply to you, just ignore it. But these people who have these accounts can create a team drive. It works like your personal My Drive. Files can be stored in it, folders can be created, and documents can be shared with other people. But a team drive can also be directly accessed and managed by more than one person. It can be useful for storing and sharing files that people collaborating on the same project or working in the same department need to use. If you have one of these accounts and you want to create a new team drive, and again, this is all in the materials that you can download, you on your main Google Drive screen at the upper left corner, you click Team Drives, and a window will open prompting you to type in a name for the new team drive. I'm not going to get too much into that because it's account specific. You might need to add coworkers in batches, as you might want to give different people different access levels. That's something to consider. But this can be a great tool if you have one of those accounts. So it's always a good idea to keep track of who has access to what, especially when you're sharing a lot of documents. From the sharing settings window under who has access, hover your cursor over the name of the person you want to set an expiration for. This is the screenshot for setting an expiration date. And that is only going to be, that's limited to the G Suite and Drive Enterprise users. So if you have a free account, you're not going to be able to do that. But you can click the timer icon that appears next to their name. You can see the little clock right there. And then you can say 7 days, 30 days, or a custom date. And then save changes, and that'll apply. But again, that is limited to the type of account that you have. So integration is one of the main selling points, I think, of Google Drive, because it is such a popular product that a lot of like practice management platforms or tools like that have really made a priority to integrate with it. And so it's a pretty seamless integration.
What's an example of an app?
The app that I'm going to talk about is you set up your own automatic flows. So we'll talk about that in just a minute. But like I know Practice Panther is a practice management platform that integrates with Google Drive. And I'm not 100% sure what that actually looks like in their system, but it just means that they work really well together. And so if I had to guess, I would imagine that like if you save something in your Google Drive, it probably automatically shows up in your practice management account, etc. It depends on the app though. But so Zapier is an app it's a service, I guess, that allows you to connect your apps and automate workflows. This applies to, so they have hundreds or maybe even thousands of apps that you can tie together. It requires a little bit of work up front to set these things up. But so I listed some examples because I think this is easier to wrap your head around when you think about examples than it is to just talk about like automation. But so you basically set these rules. So like anytime, if you send an email via Gmail, when there's a new Google document included in the email, so the rule would be anytime there's a new Google document, you can send an email via Gmail. So if somebody on like a team drive that you have access to, if they create a new Google document, and it will automatically alert you of that. So it's a way to kind of like keep tabs on everything. I know about people who get really into this, and it really works. It definitely requires some time up front to think about what you're setting up, but once you do it, people really get a lot out of it. I've heard about people who like have, for new client intake, they'll have a Google form on their website. And so it's like, if somebody is interested in setting up an intake appointment with you, they will fill out this Google form that you link to on your website, and then they will have it set up so that Google form is linked to a Google sheet, like a spreadsheet, And then it'll also be tied to like Gmail so that they get a confirmation email when you set up an appointment and things like that. So you can get really ornate with it, and it's a great tool, but it depends on your workflows. It's kind of hard to speak to what like you as individuals could do with it today. If you're interested in that, I forgot to link to this in your materials, but we did a program, it's like an archive seminar on the CBA website. It's called like Automate Your Practice or something like that, with Bobby Buchanan. He's a member here who really loves Zapier, and he talked a lot about how he has it set up. And so if you're interested in that, that could be a really good resource.
Does he do domestic relations? Is that a specialty?
I'm not sure. I forget what he does exactly. So the last thing that I want to point out is that Google is so geared towards mobile devices. And so all of these apps that we talked about today have different mobile apps that you can use on your phone pretty seamlessly. So Google Docs has an app, Google Drive has an app, so you can access all of your files on the go. You can make edits, you can look at comments and suggestions on your phone instead of having to pull out your computer if you're like traveling or on a train or something. So all of these tools that we talked about today also exist in the mobile app. And they also largely look pretty much the same. So like in the what we're looking at right now, the screenshot, the sharing button looks the same as it does in the other app or in the desktop version. The comment button looks the same. So it translates pretty well. All right, so that is all I have for the slides today. I'm gonna leave this up for just a second. If you want my email, there it is. Please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to answer questions.